Hey, what's up, guys? Ratsmah from Team Storm here, and I'm here to talk about the League of Explorers expansion and how the new cards affect Arena. You shouldn't expect too big of a change in Arena from League of Explorers because you're adding about like 12 cards per release per week into a pool of 700 cards. So it won't affect Arena in that way, but the bigger impact on Arena is the removal of the TGT card bonus. So before LoE, there was an increased percent chance that you'd get a TGT card, but they removed that for LoE. So that'll actually affect Arena a lot more than the new cards being released. But it has made for a more balanced meta. You'll see a lot more classes, and you won't run into so many rogues and paladins anymore. Here we're going to talk about the first week release of LoE and how good the cards are, how bad they are, or just talk about some interesting stuff about them. The first card is Djinn of Zephyrs. So this is a neutral epic card. You can draft this in any deck, any class. If you look at the stat line, it's a 5 mana 4/6, which is comparable to Spectral Knight or Spiteful Smith, which both have the 4/6 stat line. A lot of 5-drops have 6 health. This one is good in classes with buffs. So classes like Paladin and Druid and Priest, you get a pretty big upside where you get to use the card text you see there to help buff up your guy. Even in classes without these buffs, it's still a decent card, especially because of the epic card pool is so weak. Usually epic cards are, on average, worse than common cards, believe it or not. So this will very often be the right choice for you when you get it offered. So it's a pretty decent card. I'm not going to give scores, I'm just going to talk about them, and you'll kind of get a feeling of how good they are just through what I say about them. So this card's it's definitely above average. It's kind of like a score. And here you have Jeweled Scarab. This is the second card we'll be talking about. So in Arena, you generally don't want to skip your turn, especially your turn 2. This is where the Arena game usually starts. Very often you'd rather have a 2-3 or a 3-2, and the minus tempo from summoning something like a 1-1. This is very much like Gnomish Inventor, where you kind of skip your turn in order to play a smaller drop that generally dies to your opponent's 2-drop or 4-drop. But this card is excellent in a couple of classes. I'm going to talk about 3 of them. So in Paladin, the 3 slot has a lot of great cards. You have Aldor Peacekeeper, Muster of Battle, Coghammer, and then you just get an option between a bunch of different 3s, also Seal of Champions. So this card is pretty good in Paladin. Also, Hunter is in the same way. Kind of has a lot of class cards on 3. You got the Eaglehorn Bow, Deadly Shot, Kill Command, Unleash the Hounds, whatever it may be. And the last class I'm going to talk about is Mage. Mage generally wants to play slowly and gain a card advantage throughout the game. So slowing down on Mage is fine, especially since you get pretty good comeback mechanisms like AoE, Flame Strikes, Blizzards, and very often Polymorph and Fireball can be tempo cards as well. So the downside of it being a very slow card isn't so bad. Also, Mage has a lot of spells on 3, especially because Mage Secrets cost 3, so you have a lot more options, and that's what the Discover mechanic is good for, is making sure you're picking from a pool of 3 cards and you pick the best one. Generally, you will get a pretty good secret if you do, or you'll just get a good minion to play. So in those 3 classes, I think it's fine. But in most other classes, you don't really want to be minus tempoing yourself, and it's very dangerous to minus tempo yourself in a class that doesn't have good comeback mechanisms. So keep that in mind. And the third card, Anubisath. I have trouble reading these names, so please don't make fun of me. Anubisath Sentinel. This card is very good if you can get the death rattle off, but that is the downside of the card, is if you're behind in tempo and you can't control the board trades and you're getting removed every turn, this card will set you back even more. So if you're playing an aggressive deck or a faster deck, Anubisath Sentinel is pretty good. So if you're playing generally classes like Hunter, Warlock, Paladin, things that grab the board and generally dictate the pacing or dictate the game, the game trades, then it's a pretty good card. In classes that play more reactively, classes like Druid or Mage, Priest, then you want to be a little bit wary of picking up this card, because if you are behind on board, this will only set you back more. And generally in Arena, you lose by about 2 to 3 mana, and also you lose by like about 2 cards. So meaning that if you get behind by 2 or 3 mana, you'll lose the game. If you have equal quality of deck, quality of cards, and also like equal skill level as your opponent. So you want to be really careful of the minus tempo that this card might give you. So faster deck, then Anubisath is good. Slower deck is kind of bad. So Summoning Stone. Summoning Stone is a piece of crap, and pretty much that's all you need to say. You generally don't get too many like high quality spells in Arena, and even if you did, you never want to skip 5 mana. Like we talked about the Jeweled Scarab here, and how it's bad because you skip your 2 mana and you even get a 1/1 for it on board. But skipping 5 mana for something that does not help you trade or help you keep board control is a death sentence in Arena. So this card is really terrible. Even if you have a deck full of spells, I don't think you're going to be able to pull off that crazy combo that you want to get good use out of the Summoning Stone. So I would just never pick this card. It's terrible. Rumbling Elemental. It's a Shaman only card. I would say it's okay. It has a little bit of synergy with the Shaman class. You got Fire Guards with the Battle Cry. You got Fire Elementals with the Battle Cry. And now with the release of LoE and TGT, there are more cards with Battle Cry, more neutral cards. So you might be able to get some use out of it. Plus, if we think about the 2/6 stat line, generally your 4-drops, you want to put your 4-drops in a position where they can get a 2-for-1 for if you're getting rushed down. You want to be able to take out 2 2-drops. And it does kind of do that. The high health is the most important part about 4-drops. So generally, this is why you pick 4 5s and 3 5s over 4 4s and 5 4s. But yes, the 2/6 stat line is fine, and I think the card effect is pretty good. I would put this above average. Not extremely spectacular. Maybe make sure you know your deck before trying to pick it too highly or like rate it too highly. But it's a decent card. Sacred Trial. So this card is a Paladin secret. When your opponent has at least 3 minions and plays another, destroy it. So so Paladin secrets, it's somewhat easy to check, and it generally does not get that much value, Sacred Trial. I've seen it played. The one time I got it off a Spellslinger, I did take out an Ogre Brute, which was pretty amazing. It felt pretty good. But most times, if your opponent has 3 minions ahead of you and you're playing Paladin, then usually you're not in a good spot. You never want to put yourself in a position where Sacred Trial is good. So you never want cards that are winning you a game that is unwinnable, right? So the reason why it's even worse in Paladin is a class with a lot of buffs. Things like Seal of Champions, Blessing of Kings, Argent Protector, whatever it may be. If you're playing from behind, it's just a terrible spot to be in as Paladin. So this card, not very good. Not very good. It may be one of the worst secrets that you can pick. It can be a fun one though. And so here we have Ancient Shade. I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about this card. I generally draft my decks to curve out really well. I sacrifice quality of cards for curve, meaning that I worry more about making sure I draw into plays for every single turn. So this card doesn't hurt me too much because I'm usually not the one who's hurting for life. So usually I'll be ahead on the board and try to dictate the trades with my lower quality cards. But Ancient of Shade, it somewhat depends on what class you're playing as well. If you're playing like Warlock or a class that generally takes a lot of damage, any weapon, like a lot of weapon classes, Warrior, Rogue, you might want to kind of shy away from it. But The stats are okay, and in aggressive decks, it can definitely be a game winner. I would probably just think of this as like an average 4-drop, very average. I wouldn't read too much into the deal 7 damage when you draw it, although it can be scary. Just say it's very average for a 4. Reno Jackson. So this is the first legendary that's being released with LoE. I think this card is amazing in Arena. So generally in Arena, you do not get multiples of cards because you're getting random cards. And even if you do, very often you might be able to get rid of those cards before you play Reno. And your life total does matter. And once again, we talked about how 4-drops usually just want to trade and clean up 2-drops. 5-drop pluses are somewhat similar. So Reno Jackson's stats are a little bit weak for a 6-drop, but it does have the 6 life, which is a big deal. And you want to hit these damage breakpoints, right? So this is why Yeti and Shredder are so good. This is why a lot of things have 4 damage, is because 4 damage is a breakpoint. And if you're playing a ping class, 5 damage is another breakpoint. You don't really worry about doing a little bit any more than 5, because usually anything bigger than that, you're going to have to give your opponent a 2-for-1 by trading 2 minions into it, or you're going to hard remove it anyway. So usually your 4 or 5 damage is what you want, and the high life on Reno Jackson is pretty good. And just that battle cry is beastly. So definitely a great card in Arena. Obsidian Destroyer. So this is a warrior class card. Finally, Warrior's getting a couple of pretty decent minions to play. So this is just a straight upgrade from War Golem. And one thing that Warrior lacks is the ability to clean up small guys, small trades, or kind of resolve small trades. Very often you'll see Warriors struggle when they see like a Divine Shield or something with 1 health that they can't take out. Obsidian Destroyer helps you with that. The 1/1 synergizes well with things like Execute and helps you clean up Divine Shields. I think it's a great card. Of course, it's not... It's good if you're ahead as Warrior, and very often you can get ahead in terms of tempo thanks to weapons, and weapons being so... a lot of stat points per the mana that you use to cast a weapon or to wield a weapon. So you can get ahead, and you can start making an army of 1/1 Scarabs. I'd say it's a pretty good card for Warrior. And generally with Warrior, you kind of want to play in a way, there's 2 different kind of Warrior decks that you'll usually make or see in Arena if they're drafted well. You'll see the Control Warrior, which is the one with a lot of weapons for the early and mid game, and the late game consists of big guys. So in the early and mid game, all the Warrior is doing is cleaning board, making sure they don't fall behind, and then the late game, all they do is drop big guys and take over with card advantage. Or you can get the Face Warrior, which is the opposite. They don't really get so many early game weapons. They get a lot of early game minions, and they get a lot of late game weapons to help finish out the game after their early game minions kind of take board control, and they start hitting face down with their late game weapons. But this card fits really well with the Control Warrior. The one where you have a lot of cheap weapons and you want to just win the game with card advantage. So it's a good card. And Dark Peddler. This is definitely my favorite card of the first week of LoE. Dark Peddler is definitely a very, very strong card. So Warlock, let's talk about Warlock. Warlock kind of revolves around how efficiently you can use mana. If you skip out on 1 mana twice, that's 2 mana. That's your hero power. That's a card. You skipped out on 2 mana over 2 turns. You just wasted a card right there. And so being able to have a card that generates another 1-drop. So even if you have like a bad early game hand, this can give you your 3-drop or your turn 3 play. You can get a 1-drop and play it with another 2-drop that you have in your hand for turn 3, or you can just play it on turn 3 and then play the 1-cost card that you draw from the Dark Peddler on turn 3 with it. So it helps curve you out really well, and that's very important for Warlock because of how the Warlock hero power interacts with the Warlock. And very often, not only that, very often you'll use Dark Peddler to remove things, or you'll use it to as a finisher as well. There's a pretty high chance of you drawing into damage because of things like Abusive Sergeant, Power of Overwhelming, Soulfire. There's a lot of good 1 mana spells and 1 mana cards that Warlock can use to its favor. It works really well in Zooey type Warlocks that you might draft in Arena. And also, there's Mortal Coil as well. I'm trying to think of like all the cards 1-drops you can get that are pretty good, but generally it's a good card. Like it's a very, very good card. And lately I've been just picking it every time I've seen it, and I've been doing pretty well with Warlock. So, but yeah, that is the week 1 cards for LoE. I will be doing one of these for every week, and hope you guys enjoyed that. And I will see you guys next week for week 2. Thanks a lot, guys.